Welcome back to the Huxley Morton podcast. This week, I'm joined by Stuart McCully, founder of Phoenix-RWR. You may have seen Stuart active previously. He's always on LinkedIn. He's a big advocate for talking out about mental health and topics that many others shy away from. In today's episode, Stuart gives us a very honest insight into his personal and professional life, his story of success, and explains that while many think he's got it all, it's come at a price.
Didn't enjoy what I did. I hated it. So I have got the ultimate contract. It paid pretty much for my house. And I've got to tell you, I hated it.
Didn't make you happy?
No, not at all.
So what was going through your head then? Because in some respects, we've all just been laughing at what a fantastic deal it was.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it sounds like it was one of the worst times of your life.
It was.
You'd achieved Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You ticked all the boxes all the way up, and yet when you got to the top of the tree, it sounds like it fell down.
It was shite. It's funny. People come to me and say, "Oh, you're doing so well with your company. You've got all this." In between that, between the alcoholism and the antidepressant issues and all that kind of stuff, life isn't as pretty as people would like to think. Eyes and the sobs coming from the kitchen as she talked to my mum and dad, because they were the only people that talked to her, no family, no friends. So it struck me that there are so many things that you can suffer in life, and you have to suffer it alone because it's too awkward to talk about it. I don't know if that's a British thing. Not only did they pay me as a full-time employee, they paid me to generate and continue to build my own business and pay me a license fee for access to the information they paid me to create.
Absolutely.
For 4 years,
Mine.
I've heard so often is, this is how we always did it.
Oh my God, shoot me!
Because it doesn't matter if it was right, wrong, stupid, irrelevant. They would just do that because that's how they always did it. King mantra I told you about from Dreamcatcher: confident, cocky, lazy, dead. The reason it means a lot to me is I was confident when all of this happened. I got cocky, I got lazy, and the company died.
Welcome back to another episode of the Huxley Morton podcast, the show where each week we speak to pharma company owners and industry leaders sharing their stories of both personal and professional growth. This week, I'm joined again by my co-host and biometrics expert, Adam Walker. And on the show, we have Stuart McCully, founder of Phoenix-RWR and Redbird Solutions. Stuart, you and I have spoke pretty recently off air. I know that you and Adam have been in touch as well. But look, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Great to
meet you again, Stuart.
Well, look, Stuart, I guess one thing as immediately went through my head when introducing you there. I'll ask for a bit more of an introduction about who you are and what you do. But look, the company names, Phoenix, Redbird, the bird theme. Give us an overview of what you guys do, who you are.
Yes. So Phoenix it's just the classic, the bird that comes out of the ashes. So I set up a company in 2009 called CHUK, CHCUK. In my naivety, I thought if I go to a bigger company, they will be able to provide me with the solutions, the network, the infrastructure that I don't have. So that's when I became part of Inventive Health, City Health as it is now. I should have known as an entrepreneur, and I've been told many times now that that's not the case. If you want to innovate, you don't go big and don't go corporate. So in the 7 years that I was with them, it slowly died. So Phoenix is CHUK, but revised, coming out of the ashes. With a new understanding, a fresh look. There's no bitterness about this. It was just naivety on my own part. So Redbird, it was one of my co-founders said, right, we want to do what Phoenix is doing, but as a startup, but not Phoenix. So we'll call it Redbird. honestly, it's like Big Bird or whatever. It's just so stupid. It's why we're now called Real World Research Limited.
Right, I see.
It got to the point. Are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
You can look. It's
okay.
about
So
you.
it got to the point where we had so many fucking birds. We had red bird, blue bird, light bird. It was like, stop with the birds. Because what will happen is Phoenix will become part of Real World Research Limited. What we wanted to do was segregate the two until such times as we have the viable startup, and then it gets absorbed. Fine, it's two separate SEO kind of pathways, etc. It's as simple as that. It's really just, it's a celebration of being able to do what you love. That's what Phoenix is about. Fantastic.
I like that. And I guess the reinvention, the rising from the ashes, doing it yourself, all sounds very good. Talk to us about the two entities. How do they differ? Where do they differ? How do you do what you do? In kind of layman's terms for, the non-clinical research individual out there, myself included to an extent. Give us an overview of what the two businesses are all about.
So it started in 2004 when I joined GE Healthcare's clinical research group. They do clinical trials, that's fine. But what happens with anything that you do post-approval used within license? It's no longer a clinical trial. It was the Wild West then. I moved on to Shire. Same kind of scenario, but what they wanted to do was implement all of the restrictions you have with a high-risk clinical trial into the same kind of study. I got really frustrated, so I created a business called Chuck, which basically deals with non-interventional studies and registries. Fast forward to 2019 when I exit Cineus. I've sold Chuck, I exit Cineus, and we have Phoenix. So what Phoenix does, in layman's terms, is it's the frustrated person's way of being able to give you the information you need to run your study without any of the bullshit. It literally is a case of, you want to do this type of study in Italy, this is what you need to do. That's it. Simple as that.
Where does that data come from? Look, Adam's a data expert. He loves data. What sort of data are we talking about to provide that information that you're providing?
Anyone can do it. You just Google it.
Google it. Adam, is this true? I wouldn't necessarily say.
So the non-interventional outside of clinical trials, what you're talking about, Stuart, is what's freely available data effectively in the public domain. That's really what we're talking about, isn't it, Stuart?
Yeah, easy.
So when we're talking interventional, we're talking in the realms of a clinical trial, fixed methodologies, phases 1 through to 4. Non-interventional outside of that becomes real world data, what you would be familiar with, big data effectively, James. That's really what the difference is, isn't it, Stuart? I don't know whether you want to speak to that point a little bit further.
What became a challenge for people is we were lucky with clinical trials because we have the ICH side of things where, pretty much globally, the standards were harmonized.
Yes. So
what you see is what you get in any country. Non-interventional studies, the post-approval stuff, every country has decided, no, we know best. So every country has its own requirements. So what I have specialized in doing for the past 12, 13, 14 years is I collate the information. Google is always our friend, God bless them. And I verify it with the ethics committees and the competent authorities. So it's collated, verified. And because I started life in GCP, I used to train, and I was one of the people that developed the training modules for GCP for the National Institute of Health Research in the UK. I have a clinical trials background, so I can tell you what isn't applicable, which is what you need for this stuff. And then I consolidate it into a really tiny, this is all you need to know, and reference it. So you get that comfort and confidence factor, even auditors will do. This is all you need to know.
And to be fair to you, Stuart, what I see you doing a lot on LinkedIn is sharing a lot of those documents and putting it out there in the public domain and being very transparent about that capability, that skill set, and really offering it out to a broader population. That's how I understand that as a service, but also as an opening. Isn't that fair?
Yeah. What annoys me is, there is this old kind of mentality, and I call it old mentality because I don't buy into it, of information is power.
Yeah.
The more I give you, the less you know. So I'm not doing you a service if I don't give you the information. I feel obligated to at least give you the baseline. This is life. If you're going to run these studies, you should at least know what the basics are.
And I think it's a very admirable standard that you set, because I don't see that a lot, and I don't think many of our listeners and followers will have had experience of many people putting information out there in the public domain when they don't have to, because that's effectively what people see as being their IP, don't they?
They do. And I was always told, I would do training sessions, people would tell me, oh, you can't give them your slides. Well, I've just trained you on it. Why would I not give you the slides? Which is, I don't understand that mentality. The least I could do is give you the slides, because this world is confusing enough. If all you have is what I told you versus what I handed to you, so you can consolidate it and think about it, and because that's how the mind works.
Yeah.
If I don't give you that, then what service am I giving you?
Yeah, and that's it. It's a great approach, and I have a similar experience with sharing SOPs because many people again see those things as IP and very much lock them down and don't want to share them in the public domain. You see it more in academic settings, where universities or hospital settings or hospital clinical trial settings share them in the public domain, because it's almost as if they're because they're funded by public service. There seems to be an obligation, but you're challenging that status quo, really, aren't you?
I've been challenging it for a decade. It's slow. It's the pharmaceutical industry. Nothing happens quickly.
I think it's as I say, it is that maverick approach, but I think it's becoming more widely utilized by more and more people now. I guess that for me, it's a method that I've used for a long time. The fitness industry is one that is huge for it. They can give away, all of these fitness plans, etc., but it isn't going to give you a six-pack, because guess what? You need to administer it. You need the guidance. You need, the coaching. That's what it all comes in. So, I often say to, a lot of the job seekers that we speak to, this is how you should go and get a job, because as a recruiter, people come to me often for high-end individuals that they can't attract themselves. Entry-level folk, we rarely can assist directly, because why would you go and pay a recruiter the fees for that? We need to be adding value. So for those individuals, I'll say, look, this is what I recommend. This is how to utilize your LinkedIn profile. This is a video platform, which I've shared with Adam recently, as to how you could apply to senior management of jobs and put yourself right in front of the key decision maker to potentially land yourself an interview. Do many of them do it? Probably not. Because as you say, information is not necessarily power.
It's not.
It's what you do with it.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there, because even though I'm a short, fat bloke, in the good old days I was super fit, but the amount of times I go to the gym and people would go there just to talk, or they would be on the treadmill with a magazine. This is before the days of Walkmans and all that. I'm that old, but it's like it. What do you want from this? You can't force people to take this and get the six-pack, like you say. Love it. Yeah.
It's the application. It's doing the doing, isn't it? Effectively, you can have like we used to have, Encyclopedia Britannica, which is now Google. It's all there. It's all freely available. It's what you do with it.
Hallelujah! Yeah. I'm glad we got rid of them. The bloke's knocking on your door saying, "Would you like the next version?" No. Whoever reads that nonsense?
Whatever happened to it?
Yeah.
Dear me. Well, look, Stuart, it sounds like, I guess, what's spurred you on to build your business and found these and be innovative and creative has often been, heard it a couple of times from you just in the short time we've been on air here, is frustration to an extent. So look, let's go back before that frustration. How did you even get into the world of pharmaceuticals? Did you want to go down this route? And then talk us through that frustrating. Where did that kick in? What was it that really hit you? Because that's where so many innovations and entrepreneurs come from. It's off the back of something that should work a lot better, but doesn't.
I started life wanting to be a vet because I wanted to help people and, well, specifically their pets. I wasn't intelligent enough to do that. So when I got to university, I started doing biology and I hated quadrats and worms. So I changed to pharmacology. Pharmacology is interesting because they do a lot of animal experimentation, which is the complete 180 to what I wanted to do for being a vet. So all of a sudden, my life's not what I thought it would be. But what I discovered with pharmacology was a passion, a love, bioethics, the whole, what is it we are taking as a drug, whether it's aspirin or paracetamol or whatever we take. Why are we taking it? Where did it come from? What does it do to our body? So I got into that. My first job, ironically, was biochemical toxicology. So I taught people how to make chemical warfare agents. Can't do that nowadays. It's okay, those days have gone. I also did forensic science, so you could get away with it. I got into preclinical, which is the point where you're working out what a drug does from point A to B before you get into humans. I then moved into the clinical world. And when I was in preclinical, what surprised me is people didn't understand what they needed to comply with. And because they didn't understand what the requirements were, they just beefed it up and did as much as they thought was possible or required. None of it.
Why do you think that was, out of interest?
There seems to be this innate fear of people wanting to read a regulation or a legislation that they think they won't understand it. But if you read it, it's pretty simple. The amount of people that don't read them, and what I've heard, the phrase I've heard so often is, this is how we always did it.
Wow.
Oh my God, shoot me! Because it doesn't matter if it was right, wrong, stupid, irrelevant. They would just do that because that's how they always did it. I moved into the clinical world and I saw exactly the same thing. People didn't understand why we had, it's the basics. Why do we have the Declaration of Helsinki? Why do we have the Nuremberg Code? Because of everything that happened in the Second World War, whether it was Japan or Germany or whoever else, it didn't matter. But because of that, what we said is we will never do this again. So we had these ethical standards. And because of those ethical standards, we had the clinical trial regulations, we had ICH, GCP, all of that kind of stuff. I went to Berlin for a 3-day course on GCP and I walked out of it knowing nothing. I'm literally down the road from Nuremberg. All of this was court cases, ethics, all that. And what it brought home to me is people, if you don't understand why you're doing it, if you don't have the context, it doesn't make sense.
I'll kind of probably share your early frustration there. What I hate is the phrase, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Because I just often, you know how many times I hear that from clients? It's like, we've always used this partner, we've always done it this way, and it's not broke, don't fix it. My argument is, but if it could be better, it's as good as broken. Why not innovate? If you're always going to stand still, like your business is going nowhere. And it seems that was the frustration that was perhaps hitting you.
Yes.
Back then.
It's not even if it's not broke, don't fix it. It's we don't have a fucking clue what's going on. So let's not do anything to touch it, because if we do, we open a can of worms, which is always the case, certainly in a lot of industries. This is how we've always done it. We got away with it. Don't do anything to it. Don't touch it. It's all good. And I got frustrated with that because it's simple. Because I remember having discussions with executives at GE and Shire, both saying to them, if we know what we need to do, the beauty about that is we know what we don't need to do.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, you've simplified your procedures. You've got rid of all this histrionics, as I call it. We always did it.
Yep.
And this is how we always did it. Get rid of all of that, and all of a sudden, you've got, you've got a really simplified procedure. So they always talked about Lean Six Sigma. That's great, but if you don't know what you should have been doing, how can it be lean?
The biggest challenge to change is the old way. I think that's really what you're saying, and I've heard that said a number of times, and certainly by a number of people on this pod and on other podcasts. The old way is the biggest challenge, isn't it? And presumably, not only are you disrupting, but also over the course of the last year, 18 months, disruption has become the new norm. So it's challenging the status quo, and it's, it is broken. Let's fix it.
I think where I'm probably, I would say I'm different, but I'm the same as a lot of people is, I'm a late developer mentally. I never understood things because I couldn't understand the context. In school, you're never given the context. So I never understood things, ever. As I got into industry and I started looking at the regulations, what people should do, all of a sudden there's a baseline. Oh, this is what you're required to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would be saying, so why are you doing this? Well, because we've always done it. Well, you don't need to.
Yeah.
You don't need to. And I could reference it. So that's why when you see my works, I reference to the nth degree. Yeah. And, I have clients where they come back and they'll challenge it and say, well, our local affiliates say that this isn't right. They won't give me a reference. It is just a gut feeling. It's what we always did. And I'll then go back to them and say, okay, according to section X, Y, Z of legislation, this guideline, this, etc. This is what's required as verified by the competent authority. And I'll go, oh, yeah, meaning you didn't need to do any of that shit. What were you doing? Why were you doing that? What is wrong with you people? And
I can see where the frustration comes in, because
it's like, why?
You know that you're right. You've referenced it. You've got it data backed, and people are arguing otherwise. It is just infuriating. So I can see exactly where that came from. So look, from there, I've got on my notes from when you and I spoke that eventually you ended up starting Chuck. But it got to a point where you were getting paid to run your own company, which I just found fascinating, really. So look, for the listeners here, just talk us through that process, because it sounds like an absolutely incredible gig that you had landed there. But talk us through that.
It was honestly a weird thing. So, bear in mind that because I'm a late developer mentally, I have no context with life. I'm probably on the autistic scale when it comes to that kind of engagement, which would just explain why I thought this was normal. So I was approached. I had been servicing, shall we say, what was then Pharmanet i3 since 2009 to 2012, so for 3 years. They were one of my many clients. They were one of many clients because no one else provided this service. But what they said to me is, we would like to buy your company. Obviously thought, okay, cool, nice one. But it will take time. We know that our processes are slow. So we will employ you full time. Okay, all good. And this was, I'm quite good on IP. So the discussion was, so anything that I created that was related to Chuck, I owned. Mm-hmm. And if they wanted access to it, they had to pay a license fee. So not only did they pay me as a full-time employee, they paid me to generate and continue to build my own business and pay me a license fee for access to the information they paid me to create.
Absolutely.
For 4 years.
Mind-boggling.
Who negotiated that? Did they come to you with that negotiating position, Stuart, or did you talk it through?
I'm very lucky in that one of my university colleagues was a top IP lawyer, and she created the contract for me.
What was the
And she's on your Christmas list.
Was it kind of like, please give me the best case scenario that I could possibly get?
No, not at all. No, she was, so Lucy was straight in. This is what you need. She was working for British Tobacco, whatever they called it at the time. She was one of the head IP lawyers, and she said, right, this is how it should go. And I went, okay, I'm good with that. Yeah.
Wow.
Sent it into their lawyers at what was then Pharmanet i3, and I went, okay. I went, oh, okay.
Fine, fantastic. So what did that then look like then? So you're running your own business.
A stack of cash.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm picturing, Adam. Is the suitcases of money, and
he's just cashing in. He's just literally counting out his cash.
And back. So, but look, I guess sometimes that can be a double-edged sword, because
yes. Talk
to us about that.
You remember the Stephen King mantra I told you about from Dreamcatcher? Confident, cocky, lazy, dead. The reason it means a lot to me is I was confident when all of this happened. I got cocky, I got lazy, and the company died. Chuck, if you look at Chuck now, it's nothing. But I from 2012 to 2019, probably. Yeah, I would say it was probably only 2014 to 2019. I got so cocky and lazy, I didn't work.
Wow.
I literally didn't have to do anything. And during that time, the company that bought us or was buying us had no idea what to do with Chuck at all. So what made me happy, what drove me, was gone.
So what were you doing then? You say nothing, but like,
I went to meetings.
How did you spend your days? Because I know that personally, I go insane if I'm not busy.
My worst year, and because I live in Inverness or outside of Inverness, every journey is doubled because of the internal flights. My worst year, I was on 240 flights.
Wow.
Literally, all I used to do was go to client meetings, for bid defense meetings, or to speak to clients. I really didn't ever do any work, didn't think, didn't enjoy what I did. I hated it. So I have got the ultimate contract. It paid pretty much for my house. And I've got to tell you, I hated it.
It did make you happy?
No, not at all.
So what was going through your head then? Because in some respects, we've all just been laughing at what a fantastic deal it was. Yeah. But on the other hand, it sounds like it was one of the worst times of your life.
It was.
So what was going through your head at this point?
You'd achieved Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You ticked all the boxes all the way up. And yet when you got to the top of the tree, it sounds like it fell down.
It was shite. It honestly, the challenge, and I learned this, and I don't often tell people that I did actually get into RAF Cranwell to be an officer. I was going to be a fighter jet navigator. I always loved the challenge. If I'm not, and the wife tells me this all the time now, if I'm not busy and I'm not pushing to an extreme of what I don't think I can do, I'm not happy. So you can imagine, 7 years where you're sitting there, where you're told you have to be part of the corporate strategy. You cannot innovate. You cannot think. You cannot actually, I wasn't even allowed to update my own website that they bought.
Wow. Just seems crazy. And again, that probably, there was a different type of frustration by the sound of things, because you're not necessarily the shy, quiet type. You've already dropped a few efforts on this show. To be told it's quite restrictive, the situation that you were perhaps in, just nowhere really to go with it. And as you say, your wife kind of picked up on the fact that you like to be busy, you like to have the push. I was speaking to Adam just the other day saying I'm exactly the same. That the idea or thought of being not being busy and at 100 miles an hour
Yeah.
Fills me with dread. So look, how did you cope with that, I guess, mentally? Did it have an impact on your personal life, your family life, your friends? Because, you know, we all hear it, you know, the saying that none of us liked as teenagers, which is, oh, you've changed. Did you get much of that?
So, you know, from a history perspective, I had my first nervous breakdown in 2007, which probably inspired me to create Chuck. During the period that I was under the corporate rule, shall we say, I struggled mentally. You know, I'll be honest, I'll be frank, I've always been an alcoholic, you know, from the days that I started with GE. The first thing we ever did was go at the lounge, business class. We'd get on the flight, even if it was like, you know, a 20-minute stop, business class. It was that was just the mantra from the year 2000 onwards. I tried to stop the alcohol. God's sake, I did that for 2.5 years. I've got to say, if you're not a binger and you're a professional like me, it's not a good place to be. Mentally, I went through different, and this is an interesting one. I went through, given that I'm a pharmacologist, I went through different antidepressants. The last one I had when I was really struggling at Cineus was fluoxetine.
What's that to the
so, here we go. So I'm gonna explain this one. So the GP had explained, yeah, you know, we'll try this one for a change because everything else you seem to reject. In its previous life, so fluoxetine is the generic name. The brand name is Prozac.
Right, I see.
Everyone's heard of Prozac. Prozac is not good for anyone. I learned that the hard way. As a pharmacologist, you know, I've tried lots of different stuff, and I discovered that having taken it for the antidepressant is not good. Having coming off it, it's even worse. As anyone that's got depression, never, ever, ever take this drug. It's rough. So yeah, so that's all, you know, the pretty stuff that goes on. And it's funny, people come to me and say, oh, you're doing so well with your company, you've got all this, you know. In between that, you know, between the alcoholism and the antidepressant issues and all that kind of stuff, life isn't as pretty as people would like to think. You also have to work 24/7 to make things happen. You know that, you're there.
I think it's kind of the outside world see what you want them to see, and particularly if you're running and you're trying to generate business, etc. It's the highlight reel. Yeah, you know, we've probably all been there where you've been out with friends, whether it's on stag do's or bachelor parties for our audience in the US, or, you know, family meals and stuff, and then there is the end of the day or whatever it is that you've been doing. You know, for me recently, it was taking my son out to an adventure park. Half the time he, you know, kicked and screamed on certain things, but we still managed to get a very nice family picture at the end of the day. And
you're all smiling.
And yeah, absolutely. You know, but there was moments in that day that it wasn't all, you know, smiles and rainbows. And I think that's what you're perhaps touching on here, is that social media now is just, it's the highlight reel, isn't it? It's not the everyday things. You know, there's not people as open as yourself who are like, yes, I've struggled with alcohol, I've struggled with Prozac, I've kind of had some dark times, and you're kind of happy to say that. So what is it, Stuart? I'm interested to find out, you know, how you've got the kind of the strength to actually talk about that, because a lot of people, they don't. It's something that I personally, in my personal life, don't like to get into too much, because it's hard to talk about. You know, I talk a lot, but it's sometimes I'm like, oh, what do I say? So what would you say to, I guess, anyone, myself probably as much as anyone else? How should other people that, you know, that you're around at those times, how could they perhaps help in that sort of situation? How, you know, what worked for you?
two stories. First and foremost, I'm a Royal Air Force child. So, I went to, I don't know how many countries I've lived in, but I went to 12 different schools. And as part of that, I always learned that in order to survive, you make yourself the lowest common denominator. So you take the piss out of yourself. That way, when people take the mickey, out of you, it doesn't matter. So, and to me, that's a strength in the team. So for any team that I have as part of, what I'm doing, I'm always the lowest common denominator. So that they feel that they can relate. How do you speak to people? The second point is, I remember some good friends of my mum and dad's, and she had come in, obviously I can't mention names. She had a miscarriage, but in the world of life, no one ever speaks or talks about it because it's an awkward topic. And I was a child at the time, teenager, and I just remember hearing the cries and the sobs coming from the kitchen as she talked to my mum and dad, because they were the only people that would talk to her, no family, no friends. So it struck me that there are so many things that you can suffer in life, and you have to suffer it alone because it's too awkward to talk about it. I don't know if that's a British thing. So having been through 2 nervous breakdowns, suffered severe depression, and I've given up on my alcoholism. I'm happy where I am. It's all good. But there has to be someone that talks about it, because unless someone else talks about it, you can't talk and relate. And it's a stigma. All of these things are stigmas. My wife had 3 miscarriages. My wife is obs-and-gynae. Can you imagine delivering other people's babies in the knowledge that you can't have your own?
Wow.
And no one will talk to you because it's awkward? Whatever. No, there has to be someone that breaks that mold.
Stuart,
However, sorry, Adam.
Go on. I was going to say, not to cut across you, but you make some incredible points there. And I don't want to take this platform away from you, but I think that was how you and I first connected, because we shared our own stories, didn't we?
Yeah.
And this isn't my platform today, but that's for another day. But the way that you speak about it so openly, and I think not just the humility, but actually I think all of our listeners will identify with the things that you're describing, because these aren't unusual things, and yet it is unusual to speak about it, particularly in a in a very public forum, in the manner in which you're doing it so eloquently. So you do that, you continue to do that, and I've seen you describe these things on LinkedIn as well, and I really do admire that in you for doing that. And as I say, when we first spoke, that was the point of connection that you and I had immediately, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We connect. You can always tell when someone is of the same trauma, shall we say. You can't see it, but you can feel those pains.
I think it's in the language. I often say this to James, and we often, when we're talking to people, you can hear it in the words that people use, in the descriptions that they, in the manner in which they describe certain things. But I can always hear those clues, and you're very open about it. So you don't need, they're very clear, your points that you're making. But actually, as you say, it's low level. But if you're tuned into those words, it's through CBT and various other neuro-linguistic programs that work in our brains. If you've been through any of these talking therapies, that you hear it and you understand the language, don't you? That's what it's about.
I've got to say, some people, especially locally, they look at me as a success. I look at myself as a broken man. I do what I can with what I've got, but I know that I've broken so many times. What is success? I'm about to launch the Real World Research Limited. So James, to your point, Redbird, what the fuck was that about? So Real World Research Limited, it's about to launch next month, and it will be awesome. But at what price? this is what people don't seem to understand in the business where you are a consultant or you create your own business. It's not free, you know, unless you have mum and dad's money behind you, it's all good. But for those of us that don't, like ourselves, we create from scratch. So yeah, it comes at price, but also we can be proud of that.
I like it. I like it. So look, Stuart, what does, I guess, not necessarily success, but what makes you happy nowadays then? You know, the new business or new name is coming. We're ditching the birds. We're shooting them down.
It's those birds.
Yeah. The birds are off.
Yeah.
You know, what does the future look like for you? I know that sort of after you and I first spoke, you sent me a fantastic pic of Stuart's fishing spot, and that was, you know, to get out and actually just enjoy kind of life, a bit of peace and quiet, etc. What makes you happy now? What is next in store for you and for the business?
So it's funny, you know, I don't have major aspirations. So, you know, I'll be honest, I own my mum and dad's house. I brought them up here because my dad was having a really hard time. So we bought them out. It's in Scotland where we are. We only have a mortgage for 2 houses, £300,000.
Wow.
My aspiration is to pay off the mortgages and give my wife and my parents enough money to be happy. That's it.
It's simple.
That's it. You know, it's simple. It really is.
Fantastic. And the business, what's next? What does the remainder of the year look like for?
Yeah, I love that. That's the thing, you know, I'm a workaholic. I am a perfectionist, and I never think anything I do is ever good enough. So it's a good combination, but not if it's you that's doing that. We will be launching next month with the RWR-regs.com pitch. So in essence, we've turned the business model on its head. If you look at the regulatory intelligence that's out there for clinical research, it's all about what is it you need to do. So what we're saying to people with the new model is, what we're selling you is the updates. You get what you need to do on a day-to-day basis, how you need to run the studies for free.
Mm-hmm.
Totally different.
Wow.
And so much cheaper than people like Viva or Cortelius. So it's a totally different model. That's product number one. Product number two is what I'm working on at the minute, is medical devices. So I am on country 42 at the minute. So by the end of the year, we will have a product that once people subscribe to the updates, they get the core stuff free. It will tell them how to do clinical investigations for all of the types of medical devices. So is it,
I guess I'm thinking as a potential customer, client, is it like a tiered bit of productization in there from yourselves then? So you've got as we said, look, there's a lot of stuff that you're happy to say, look guys, it's going to add value to you. we're happy, you know what, we'll give it that away. If you want the bolt-ons, the extras, you know, the real guidance, that's where you can then level up as appropriate, effectively.
I've got to say, every time you put your arms up, I'm loving seeing your guns. That's impressive. Okay.
I got that. It was a fitness plan. I bought it.
Yeah, I'll replace impressive. I'll replace impressive with jealous. So you know, you've obviously got to have the basic, and honestly, the way we're pitching it, these are, you know, single consultants to small startups, they can afford this. And then you got the pro, and then you got the enterprise. But the whole point here is we've turned it on its head. You know, when Chuck sold stuff, there is no market, because I undersold the whole market. I was selling reports that should be sold for £2,000-3,000 for 50 quid.
Wow.
No one could compete. So it's already out there as, you know, well, we always use your reports. This kind of thing, what we're trying to do is, I'm learning from my co-founders that, you know, that's not how business works.
Funnily enough, I was listening only the other day to a podcast where they were talking about the monetizing and the subscription model, and it sounds like that might be something you either are going to be doing around that training and video subscription piece. Is that what this is?
Yeah. You can.
What this is speaking to? Because this is where the big bucks come.
Yeah, you subscribe to it, and there's no tie-in, no nothing. If you go in, you don't like it, it's fine, you leave.
But that's where the big money comes in the repeat subscriptions, the repeat use, and actually just getting people coming back time and time again, rather than just putting it out there and giving it once and charging once. It's a repeat, and that clearly is the model that you're thinking of.
Adam, honestly, that's the hope. I've got a mortgage to pay off. Come on, people.
I think that'll be easy. If it's as good as you say it is, and if it's as far-reaching as the work sounds like you're going into.
Well, it's funny because, you know, we've got beta testers in GSK, etc., and they're all going, "Oh my God, why can't we have this now?" Where we differentiate is we add context. We're not just giving you information like Cortelius does. There's a reg. What we're doing is saying, this is the impact, and this is what you should think about, and this is why it's important. So we give all of that context. So, and the beauty of what we're doing is, because I've been doing this for so long, I don't need to go to every website all over the world. I know where to go.
Yeah. Well, you're the expert. You're the expert. So if you overlay that with some of the tools that we've talked about, James, around Loom and various other things, then you've got that in-person training capability, haven't you, to be in the virtual room with the individual training? Is that a platform that you're familiar with?
What's Loom?
Ah, my goodness, this is a whole nother conversation. Oh, wow.
I'll definitely have to give you a bit of an education on that off air. Show, but it's a great.
Oh, that's a game changer
for video education, business development.
Absolute game changer.
So I'll definitely fill you in on that. But it sounds exciting what you've got planned. Be interesting to follow this. But look, for now, for our audience, we always like to wrap up the show, Adam, don't we, with a few quick fire questions for you. So, we do this with all of our guests, and yeah, let me kick you off with the first one. Look, you've talked a lot about your younger life, but what is if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
Life is too short. Live it.
It. Short and sweet.
Okay, so following on from that, the number one book or resource on your mantelpiece at the moment that you're referring to the most, presumably that it might be some of your own reference materials, as opposed to the Encyclopedia Britannica.
No, Good Night, Mr. Tom.
Good night.
Honestly, it's a book I've read so many times, and I have a library of 4,000 books, sci-fi, fantasy. My GCSE book was Good Night, Mr. Tom by Michelle McGorian. I have to get her name right. And I continuously read that, probably every other year. Love it. It makes me laugh. It makes me cry.
Impressive. Is that the one that they've had a TV show around?
They did. The bloke from Morse did it.
Yeah.
The TV's never as good as the book. Read the book.
Well, I have to get it on the reading list. But look, moving on. It sounds like there could be further growth for you as a business. When you are building teams, what are the top 3 qualities that you look for in an individual? I guess.
So, having done this multiple times, mental flexibility, and what I mean by that is, I need people that don't think they know everything.
Mm-hmm.
I need people that know that they don't. That's number 1. Integrity. I have to trust people. And number 3, which is probably more important than all of the rest of them, sense of humor.
I agree.
I think we've ticked all of these boxes today.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree. Sense of humor for me is a massive one. If you're working with people, you spend so much of your life on them. And reverting back to your, one piece of advice, life is too short. Why waste it? Dealing with people that aren't going to make your life fun. So look, I agree there.
Your favorite thing outside of work, dare I ask?
Yeah.
Apart from the F-bomb.
I'll go for the safe one, so there are actually two. I do Technics Lego, but the one that brings me most peace is I sit on the shore of the West Coast and fish. And I'm not actually fishing, I'm just absorbing.
Yeah, I think we talked about that before, didn't we? That sounds like that's your happy place. That's the place where you go to have your deepest thoughts and clarity.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Sounds beautiful.
And look, to finish off the show, Stuart, what is your number one golden rule for life and for business?
Have fun.
I like it. Very much in tune with, I guess, what you've said throughout the whole journey here. And I just want to thank you for coming on and being so honest. I did not realize we'd kind of get into some of the bits that we did.
We've gone deep. We've gone very deep, James, haven't we?
Yeah.
I enjoy it. As I say, look, I'm someone that has in the past probably shied away from any conversations like that. But now kind of hearing it from yourself of just being like, just talk about it. Don't shy away. I'm someone who can take advice sometimes quite literally. So I'm, someone says, do it, just do it. I'm happy to follow that advice from a man that's been there. So look, Stuart, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. For anyone looking to reach out to you, I know that you're extremely active on LinkedIn, so we'll get your details shared there. But anywhere else, or if anyone wants to reach out to you, whether it's investors, customers, clients, people that want to talk mental health, what is the best way to get you?
Just Google me.
Fantastic. Well, look, thanks again. You have a fantastic day, and thanks for coming on the Huxley Morton podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Stuart.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.